Local Women Magazine presents Local Women Podcast, the show for things that matter. Keeping an Eye on It podcast from Local Women Magazine is brought to you by Cathedral Eye Clinic, Northern Ireland's leading eye specialist.
Hello, we're back for the Keeping an Eye on It podcast sponsored by Cathedral Eye Clinic. Here I am again with three fabulous women who you're going to want to meet. This is a podcast where real women get their say about everything, really. We talk about men, we talk about life, we talk about love, all kinds of things. Now, I've got three great girls I'm not really allowed to say that, am I? Sorry. Three great women with me today. Now, the first one, I'm going to let her introduce herself because you do something very different. This is Ciaran Doran. What do you do?
Well, I'm known as a curator. And for those of you who might go to museums and galleries, a curator is a person who, like a curate of a church, looks after the things. Mm-hmm. Whereas coming to live here 18 years ago, I had to break that mould, work on my own as a curator. So I'm an independent museum curator and I work in the arts and cultural heritage sector, but I overlap into arts and health, photography, music, lifestyle, health and well-being, all sorts of things. So I basically curate projects for people, which is giving people the opportunity to see how far they can take a project, and I guide it on the way.
Interesting.
So that's roughly what I do. Not always in museums.
Do you see how I could not have explained that? That's a very different kind of job.
It's a kind of under the radar role.
I love it. Mm-hmm. And next to you, I have the fabulous Shelley Martin. Now, Shelley is the CEO. I love a CEO. A CEO of the 4 Beauty Group.
That's right.
If you've ever heard of the Skinition products, that's you.
Yeah.
You've made these products. She makes tan. She makes beauty products. She does everything. So it's very, very wonderful to have you here with us today.
Lovely to be here.
And then I have a lady who describes herself as everything from the pot washer to the host. She owns a pub in Ballymoney called Fat Willys. That's named after her husband. I don't know. We're not even going there. This pub is fantastic. I ate there recently. I would honestly say it is some of the best food I have eaten ever. It is a very fabulous Emily Davidson. Emily, it's lovely to have you along, all the way from the North Coast.
Keeping an Eye on It podcast from Local Women Magazine is brought to you by Cathedral Eye Clinic, Northern Ireland's leading eye specialist.
Right, ladies, first up, let's talk about ageing. Every time I look in the mirror, I realise that I am ageing, and that's okay. But it's something I see in the papers a lot. There seems to be like examples of who's ageing right. So we see Jennifer Aniston, who's nearly 60, looking absolutely fabulous, and that's held up as something that we should aspire to, I guess. Then we see Pamela Anderson, who's not wearing makeup anymore, and people are a bit sort of sniffy about that. Recently, I've seen a picture of Andy McDowell with her grey hair now, and people are like, "Oh, she looks old." Well, of course she does. She's in her 60s. So, Ciaran, where do you stand on this whole ageing? Like, should we even be talking about this as women?
This is my favourite subject at the moment because I'm 63 and a half.
You look great.
I'm 64 in November. And when I let people know what my age is, they absolutely say, "Oh my God," like they feel sorry for me. You know,
really?
They kind of have I can see people's jaw drop, but I think it is slightly a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. The culture that we live in, that we endorse ourselves because we're inspired. And there's something about being the age I am now that I now have a different perspective. You're kind of halfway up the mountain looking down rather than being at the bottom working your way up, where you kind of don't know, you haven't found your role model for your era. And sometimes that's something that helps people. You know, it might be Liz Taylor or me, Joan Collins.
Yeah, she's fabulous, isn't she? She's fabulous.
There's a variety of people like Liz Hurley, people who are 60 and posing kind of almost naked for birthday. Those things are great, but I don't feel disappointed when people say, "Oh my God, goodness me." I think, "Oh, well done." You know, I am the age where I can clearly remember how my mother was, and I was in my 30s, and so it gives you a perspective. I think when you are younger and you are things that we often discuss about fighting, or what look shall I go for? I do think in other countries, like especially in France or Spain or Italy, you will see older women being graciously accepted visually.
Good point. Yes. Yes.
Very much. You would often see a very sophisticated lady in Paris having her coffee with her poodle, perhaps with a much younger partner or friend. And
I'm liking the way this conversation's going.
And there's no kind of, it's acceptable. And I do think that it is a lot to do with the intensity of exposure of looking to the icons, perhaps like the Kardashians.
Yes.
Mummy Kardashian at the moment looks incredible. And
What do you think of Mummy Kardashian?
I think she looks unreal.
I think whatever she's done, she's kind of rejuvenated, but it kind of does look quite natural, quite youthful, quite gamine, which I think is a lovely look. So my feeling is I love meeting women of about my age and younger, because you just get an antennae for, well, you don't have to do that. And you kind of know how to play it. So I'm very happy.
You're happy being your age.
I am.
And you look great.
Well,
you look absolutely fabulous.
I was doing okay until I got a lovely letter from HMRC to say in 3 years' time I'll be eligible for
Nonsense.
my pension.
Throw that in the bin.
So I'm not ready for the golf club. I'm not ready. I'm just going to carry on as I am. And there are other things that we've talked about, the things that you can do yourself to maintain your youthfulness and your longevity. And that is, A, by doing things like this, meeting other people, especially women together, discussing quite openly their issues, that, you know, the 4 stages of our life that we go through, from puberty to pregnancy to perimenopause to actual menopause,
to old age, to glorious old age.
Yeah, there's a kind of value in looking at the balance, and it's all to do with lifestyle and what you can afford and what you can do, but stripping back and paring back to how you look when you wake up in the morning. Be happy with how you look when you look fresh.
That's something that I'm going to pick up with you, Shelley. Value. The value doesn't seem to be placed so much on older women. Now, you work in the beauty industry. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's a very personal journey.
Yes.
I think we should age the way we want
Yes.
to age, and it really does depend what that is for each individual. I don't particularly believe that you need tweakments and the knife, etc. I do think consistency plays a huge part in that, and for us at Skinnition, it's very much about paring that back and actually being happy in your own skin. So we talk about happy, healthy skin.
Yes.
But that is all about your own self-confidence. We were talking beforehand, I mean, every weekend I don't want to wear makeup all the time. I just want to run around in my trackies, etc. I don't feel the need to be all of that.
Yes.
But that's just having good skin and being confident in your own skin. And I talk quite a lot as we age about being a queenager. So I think it's incredibly powerful.
I'm going to write that down. Yeah. I like that. I learned so much from you, woman, honestly. Queenager.
It is so important that, do you know what, once we get into our 40s, we've done all the kids stuff, all the rest of it, we are powerful people. We have life experience, and we have so much to give back to the younger girls coming through. And I think it is important to actually be confident in yourself.
I love that your brand is not only to have happy skin, but it's to be happy in your skin.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really like that. I think that's great. Now, Emily, you're a little bit younger than us. You're always ahead of you. Have you tried anything wacky to try and look a bit younger?
Well, yes, I've had a bit of chemical peel.
How did that go?
Not good. Dermaplaning, not good.
You've tried these things?
Yes, I've tried them. I've just gone back to basics, just moisturiser, wash my face.
And did you feel pressure?
I think so. Well, the one that I got done was before I got married, just before I got married. So I think that was the whole, you want to look your best.
And your husband is sitting here. Did he appreciate it?
No, he did not. No, probably. He got slagged off.
So in a way, we're putting pressure on ourselves.
100%.
It's woman putting pressure on woman, which is interesting.
100%. And I turn 40 next year, so I've
a baby.
I'm sort of reflecting a bit more on, thinking about even my mother when I was maybe 20 and my mum was the age I am now, and
it was a different world.
Yeah,
a different world.
I'm so glad I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I didn't have social media. I wasn't makeup videos have to look this way, that way. You just wear. Yeah. And I think that's maybe why now I maybe don't have as much pressure on myself to look good. If I don't wear makeup quite often and don't care.
Which I think is great. Just embrace the face you have. I think that's interesting too. Ciaran, I mean, this pressure that is put on us, there's more pressure on us than like our mums kind of just got old and that was that, and they had the wee perms and that was that, and that's fine. But now, how much pressure are we putting on the next lot of people coming?
I think an incredible amount. I mean, I think I've lived here 18 years. I came from London, where anything goes in London. You can wear your pyjamas on the underground. You could eat your Rice Krispies in a bowl from a flask and water, which I've seen people do. I've seen people drinking vodka out of a Evian water bottle.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Here, the thing that I really loved, because for the first 5 years I used to get the bus everywhere. I now drive, and I don't know why I used to get the bus everywhere, but it was great for people watching. So I got to know, see all the schoolgirls going to school, and gradually over the past 18 years, there's, I think you mentioned queen aging. I think of pensioners as in musketeers.
Pensioners.
Yeah, pensioners.
I love it.
A bus driver used the term once to explain. I'd found a pair of gloves that had been left on the bus. He goes, those were left by some old pensioners. And I thought, don't say old, but I quite like the word pensioners.
Yeah.
So I think when you are young, you are not thinking ahead, and you're not thinking about kind of protecting your body from even smoking, vaping, alcohol, overexposure to sun. But what I did notice was seeing how the schoolgirls have now there's no teenage. They go from primary school almost to fully grown women. That there is some physical changes that are happening much, much earlier than perhaps when I was growing up. You know, my transition was, I was always very tall. So I looked older than I was, but I was still quite naive and quite vulnerable and gullible. And it was kind of kept that way by the routines, the rituals of, you know, there was no mobile phone saying, I'm on my way home, I'm stopping off for a coffee. It was like, you're what?
Yeah.
So that's what I've noticed, not just here, but in London, that transition age isn't really, it's kind of skipping a massive jump.
It is skipping. Now, Shelley, people are starting their skincare earlier and earlier. Like back in our day, like, come on, we used a bit of soap or maybe used the hand wash, you know? And then, you know what I mean? Like, or you use that awful Clearasil, remember that? You're stripping off your, But like nowadays, every 14-year-old girl has a skincare regime. Yeah. What are they going to look like when they're older?
That's the scary thing. They're not using the right products as well because it's trend-led, going in to some pharmacies and department stores that are actually allowing young teenagers to buy these products as well. Like retinol should not, like your skin does not need retinol. I have a 7-year-old now, every now and again. I will, she wears SPF, because she has skin like me and burns very easily. Yeah. But every now and again, she likes to do a little cleanse. That's, that is fine. But all of our friends have teenagers who are starting to get breakouts. And I'm just like, all they need is a cleanser and moisturizer. That's it. Do not allow them to use anything else because it really is into your 30s before you start, that collagen starts to deplete.
And we didn't fiddle around with our skin because there weren't products, we didn't have those products. We didn't. Absolutely. So, Emily, do you plan to age gracefully?
It depends what way. I think I certainly won't be going grey. I don't think anytime soon. Well, not fully grey. I mean, obviously I have. Yes, obviously I have gone grey, but don't look too closely. No, because I'm so dark as well. So I'm sort of going lighter and
Good
lighter.
Good idea. Yeah.
But no, I'm not. I don't think I would ever get anything drastic done to my face. I've definitely taken more interest now in looking after my skin and starting to see the fine lines and stuff. I think as a teenager, I never had outbreaks or.
Yeah, so you're lucky.
So I was lucky. So I was one of those teenagers that probably did use hand soap. I
really did. I used the hand
soap. So I think now is like literally in the last year or two, I'm like, okay, now I maybe need to start
step it up a bit. Step up the skincare.
But I think it's more just for myself. I like to look fresh.
Yes.
It's like I feel good in myself when I'm. Feel confident when I
by having nice skin. Yeah. So I think what we've decided, girls, is that we're not going to age gracefully or disgracefully. Yes. We're just going to age, and that's that.
Absolutely. We're all going the same way.
Yep.
Local Women Magazine presents Local Women Podcast, the show for things that matter. Keeping an Eye on It podcast from Local Women Magazine is brought to you by Cathedral Eye Clinic, Northern Ireland's leading eye specialist.
Transform your home with style and grace. At Decora Blinds Belfast, we offer elegant, made-to-measure blinds, blending beauty with functionality. From vibrant Alumatech aluminium Venetians to stunning shutter blinds, each available in a range of colours and slot widths. Wood or PVC Venetians, you'll hardly know the difference. Add tapes for that extra touch of luxury. Discover timeless design. Discover Decora Blinds Belfast.
Make your living room the heart of your home with Glen Hill. From media walls to fireplaces, stoves to electric fires, we blend traditional charm with contemporary style. Visit Glen Hill, Stockman's Way, Belfast, or glenhill.co.uk. Glen Hill, affordable quality for over 40 years.
Keeping an Eye on It podcast from Local Women Magazine is brought to you by Cathedral Eye Clinic, Northern Ireland's leading eye specialist.
Right, ladies, let's talk about the pressure to do it all. Okay, these days you open up your phone and you look at Instagram and everybody is having a glow up, leveling up. They're hiking, they're sea swimming, they're doing stuff, they're improving themselves. Can we stop? Can we just stop? When did this start? Like, it used to be back in my day, I sound so old, back in my day. Back in my day, you know, you were just normal and you just sort of got on with it. Why has being normal, like, I don't know, gone out of fashion, Ciaran?
I agree with you saying when you open up your phone, somebody's just done Couch to 5K. And initially that can make you feel, oh God, I haven't even done that. And then you think realistically, I have a dog. That's the priority in the morning.
Yeah.
Walk him.
Mm-hmm.
If we've got time in the evening, walk him. So I think, again, as you age, you begin to disseminate what's really important to you and the other things that you can try.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always learnt through experience that massive changes very quickly don't last. So it's doing small incremental things.
Yes.
A bit like when you're talking about skincare, you're talking about lifestyle. I think people have forgotten that you can stop the train, jump off for a little bit and then get back. Because we all have our own pressures of our own work and life. But I do think, unfortunately, it is led not just by what I call local social media, you know, your own friends that you follow, but then the wider circle. But then even on the news, there will always be a story about an achievement, but it's usually something quite mega. It's not the ordinariness of somebody's just achieved something,
ordinary
grown
stuff.
the best courgettes in the village show. That's why I kind of, it's almost like having a viewfinder that you want to kind of bring it down to focus on yourself. And again, for me, I suppose because I came here with no family, no friends, didn't know anybody, you then make your roots and you know what's really important. I think aspirations come depending whether you're creative, whether you're sporty, whether you're musical. You've got your own personal things that you might really, really push and push for. For me, it would be learning new creative things rather than doing Couch to 5K. As long as I get my steps in, walking the dog, that's fine by me. But I would say even 5 years ago, I would be very, very, oh God, they're going to Thailand.
I have to go there. I
haven't been there.
I have to go to Thailand and I have to work with those elephants. I have to, you know. But there is an awful pressure. Like, do you think people are scared of just being okay?
Is it, or people feel the need to
be amazing?
But post about it and show people what you're doing. Sometimes I find it can be quite motivational. Sea swimming, for example, where I took it up a couple of years ago. Like, if I didn't see other people doing that, I would never have tried it. And I know I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
But it might be OTT to post about it absolutely every single time. And that's what puts pressure then on people think, oh, well, I can't do all of that and I can't fit it all in. But it does come back to your own priorities and your own values, really.
Yes.
You know, live the life that you want to live.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
Emily, do you think it's okay to just be okay?
I think absolutely.
Just to be average?
Yeah, I think average is what's wrong with average.
I love that. And I can kind of see that in you, that you're like, you seem to me a girl who's very happy in your own skin.
Yeah.
And I think that's commendable. Yeah. I think that's really good. I think that's really good.
I think I would have always been at school and stuff. I was always what you call like a high achiever, I suppose.
Yes.
I had to be the top of the class, the best at this. And I think just as I've got older and just sort of chilled out a little bit.
Yeah, you seem quite chilled. Ciaran, do you think these days you have to be exceptional to be noticed?
I do. I think even in the creative area that I work in, even the pressure comes to that element of
Yes.
people not just happy with the RUA Royal Ulster Academy for a piece of work. They have to go to London, or they have to go to the Hibernian
Yes.
Art Society. So for me, I was very happy that once I had one photograph that was in a major exhibition.
Yes.
And I still keep going on about it, like I'm mentioning it now. But for me, I was happy that I had just done that.
Yes.
Done that once. And
Yeah.
I think there's nothing wrong with being modest. Like you were saying, it's okay just to be okay. I think modesty, there's a way of dressing, again, comes from the continent. French women, the way they dress, even like a kind of gala ceremony, there's a modesty and a stylishness. And I think that can reflect in your own professional performance, but also personally, I suppose I have to sometimes be gregarious and outgoing to encourage other people to do mosaic, which I did on Saturday with 30 people. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. You're going to be wanting to go home and do this. And a couple of people were like, really? So I think being okay to be okay and being okay with yourself and having your little set things that are your
It'd be nice
pinnacle.
if we could embrace that. Do you remember in school, like I remember being in school and I was sort of like a B grade student and that was fine and I sort of tootled along. But nowadays everybody wants A's and A stars. Do you think there's too much pressure?
There is a lot of pressure on kids now.
Yeah.
They put a lot of pressure on themselves as well. But yeah, it's a tough old society out there at the moment.
It's too tough. It's too hard. Like, I mean, do you think young people have it? I think I would not want to be a young person.
I definitely wouldn't be. I honestly think social media is the crux of a lot of it. Like, we just went to school, went home,
I know,
out
it was
to
so
play.
much
Like, there was
easier. You didn't have to be exceptional
You
at
didn't even have
anything.
phone. You knew when to come home. The street lights came on, and you went home, and you weren't on doing TikTok videos. And
in school, there was one girl in the class who was really clever, and that was just it. You didn't try and compete with her. She was just the clever girl, and that was that. And then there was one girl who was really good at sport, and that was just, you wouldn't have dreamt of trying to compete with her because that was her thing. Yeah. And that was that. And you just sort of got on with it. Oh, life was easier, girls. Life was easier. I say this all the time, our poor children, but I guess, have we caused this? Shelley's saying, yes, we have caused this, haven't we?
I think they become what they see as well.
Yeah.
We need to stop. Yeah. Let's embrace the ordinary, girls, okay? Let's actually try and embrace the ordinary going forward.
Local Women Magazine presents Local Women Podcast, the show for things that matter. Keeping an Eye on It podcast from Local Women Magazine is brought to you by Cathedral Eye Clinic, Northern Ireland's leading eye specialist.
Don't just picture a new look. Step right into it at Glen Hill, Stockman's Way. Explore Belfast's biggest media wall displays with bespoke designs from Mavonic and Alir. Plus, stunning multi-fuel stoves and fireplaces. Find your modern way of living only at Glen Hill, Stockman's Way, Belfast.
Keeping an Eye on It podcast from Local Women Magazine is brought to you by Cathedral Eye Clinic, Northern Ireland's leading eye specialist.
And finally, ladies, let's talk about the spy who finally got the job. So, MI6 has appointed its first female chief. How do we feel about that? We've got a real-life James Bond here. It's one for the record books. Her name is Blaise Metrowelli, and she's about to be Britain's new C. That's like M in James Bond, like Judi Dench character, who actually was a female, but that's not real life. No, Kim, James Bond's not real life. Right, got it. Right, so this lady is Cambridge graduate. She's a former banker, trained in Moscow, speaks fluent Russian, and is currently head of counterterrorism. Ciaran, why did it take 116 years for this to happen?
But again, it's like all these things that are happening now have been going on under the radar with women for years.
Yes.
The biggest exhibition I've ever worked on in London was Women in War. And it covered women who worked in espionage, who were spies, who were sending messages back, going undercover in France. People like Violette Zaba, who won medals for bravery.
Yeah.
But people didn't find out about this till years later. Florence Nightingale, a woman ahead of her time.
Yes.
So women in history have been breaking the mould. Joan of Arc, Boadicea, I could go on.
Yes.
But this woman is incredible. And I think for them to be so open about it shows maybe a new chapter in accepting that, this is the way it's going to go. And I think the legacy it might break the mold from the kind of Smiley's people, John le Carré look to the world of counterterrorism, espionage and everything. And she probably, I saw a picture of her today on the news and she looked great. I was really thinking she's not the Judi Dench with the grey hair and the pashmina and the spectacles that you might expect. She looked fresh and quite,
normal. Normal.
Yeah.
A normal
and do you
woman.
think she has it's just been publicised more,
Yes.
like you say, over history? But we are starting to break through ceilings. We are putting ourselves out there more.
Yes.
But it's being publicised more now as well from an awareness perspective. I think it's fantastic to see.
And it's a nice role model. Like, how do you feel for your daughter? What role models are out there for her? Apart from yourself, obviously.
Yeah, she is crazy on TikTok.
Like, who would her role models
really
be?
Silly. Gymnasts. So she's
Good.
Gymnasts, and I hear her listening to YouTube about
Yes.
gymnasts and stuff, which can be great stories and sports people, and which is great. But there is definitely a fad of looking at people on TikTok. It's more about how they look,
Yes.
more than anything. And I don't agree with that.
Which isn't good. Emily, is there anything that we as women can't do?
I don't think so. I think if there was more women in charge of governments and institutions, I think
It would
the
get
world
done.
would be
Things would get done.
better. I think
Things would get
I
done.
think the world would be a more peaceful place. I think women, I don't know, maybe it's because of being mothers, or I think we're more
Nurturers.
Nurturers. I don't believe that the world would be in the state that it's currently in.
No.
If there was more women in charge.
You're someone who's done a big U-turn in their career.
Yes.
Tell us about that. You went from one thing to another.
So my husband always had another business which I sort of helped him with, but I was actually a chartered accountant, and I've left my job then to help him with that business, and then obviously set this one up. So it's been a massive U-turn. I worked for Ireland's largest ground investigation company, so it was.
That sounds great. I don't even know what that means. It sounds fantastic.
Basically, we go build anything. We're in doing they test the ground to see for
Wow.
drills, big drilling rigs, and so I could have worked out how much a drilling rig cost per day.
That's a very male-orientated career that you were in. And
Massively
how was that? How was it being a female in a male-orientated
I
environment?
enjoyed it. I was the only at that point. I was the only female manager in the place.
Love that.
I think there was maybe 120 staff, and maybe 10% was women.
Love that.
And you're dealing with very corporate side. Americans partly owned the company, so you were dealing with a lot of corporate. Then you were dealing with the work men as well. So
Yes.
you're going from one brain.
And now
to the
you're
other.
running a pub where she keeps order. She keeps those men in order.
Dealing with all sorts.
Well, you do. You
well,
do.
I find as well in there, if there is ever any issues and stuff, I deal with it, not William, because I find people listen. I don't know if they listen to a woman more. I can diffuse a situation better, or
I think it's the ability to multitask as well.
Huge.
Men
Yes.
are, I'm talking like politicians, are quite compartmentalised. This is a job, let's get it done, let's do it. Whereas women have got this ability to cook, to shop, to take a phone call, to think ahead.
To look after their mothers, to look after their husbands' mothers, to care,
see it all
to
before
pick up
they
the
need
dog
it,
from the
my
groomers, to
phone
sort
is
his
just
a
a
list
of alarms with reminders
of things
all
that I
day.
have to do.
Yeah, and I think that kind of, I can imagine this woman would have a really good overall perspective. But what I actually love is, when people think of her role, they do think of James Bond.
Yes.
And I worked for a year on James Bond, on looking after their archive.
Wow.
And the head of that archive,
You see the people you meet
was
in
a
this
woman.
podcast. It's great.
Was a woman, Barbara
Yeah.
Broccoli,
Yes.
Cubby Broccoli's son.
Yeah.
And she has broken the mould in the film and production world for, I know, yes, they've sold a lot of the films and everything to Amazon, but as a woman in a very difficult area to work in, she broke that mould. And I think what you were talking about, that ability to multitask is something that innately comes quite naturally to us.
Do you know, maybe we just don't look for the glory either.
Because we're so busy trying to think we're just so busy thinking, what am I going to have for my tea? Whenever the husband messages,
And
not that I
how's
have a
that?
husband anymore, when they message, go, what's for tea? We're too busy
Yeah.
cooking and doing all the wife work as well. Women are great, aren't they? This is what I say every single time that we come, because we're now coming to the end of this podcast. Ladies, you have been incredible. Honestly, the stories today. Thank you so much, Ciaran, and thank you so much, Shelley.
Thank you.
And Emily. My goodness. What have we learned? That women are brilliant. That we're better than men, and we're just class. Would that sum it up? Yeah. But we still love men, because we're not here to hate our men. No. We do like our men. We do. Girls, thank you so much. Emily just said sometimes, even though her husband's sitting here watching her. Girls, you've all been fantastic. This has been the Keeping an Eye on It podcast, sponsored by Cathedral Eye Clinic. Tune in again next week.
Local Women Magazine presents Local Women Podcast, the show for things that matter. Keeping an Eye on It podcast from Local Women Magazine is brought to you by Cathedral Eye Clinic, Northern Ireland's leading eye specialist.